Chapter 1: The Sudden Exit. A second-story window of a townhouse flew open so violently it struck the outer wall with a bang. A man in noble attire fell backward into the night. His face contorted in pain, arms grasping at air. He struck the cobblestones below with a sickening crunch and lay motionless. A pool of blood slowly formed around him. The town of Blackmore hung above the broken body. Timber-framed houses and crooked chimneys pressed tight together. Evening fog slid in from the marshes, curling around hanging shop signs and pooling in the gutters. Lanterns burned low along the main thoroughfare, their light wavering in the damp air. For a moment nothing moved. Then, slowly, another figure appeared at the window. He wore an ornate breastplate etched with a sigil and a dark sash across one shoulder. His hair was bound tightly at the nape of his neck, his jaw clean-shaven and severe. He looked down at the body without surprise, resting one gloved hand on the sill. His eyes swept the street left and right. Seeing nothing of interest, he withdrew from the window and vanished back into the chamber. Across the narrow street, half concealed by stacked crates and a sagging awning, a boy crouched in shadow pressed against the wall and holding his breath. He was thin as a reed, wrapped in a shirt too large for him and breeches patched at both knees. Dirt streaked his face in old lines, and his toes curled against the cold stones. He had been waiting for the bakery across the lane to discard its stale bread. Instead, he had seen a man fall from the sky. The nobleman's body lay twisted, one arm flung outward, fingers curled as if still clutching at something. A dark stain began to spread beneath him. The boy's breath trembled in his throat. He should run, but his legs remained rooted to the ground. The guard would come. They always did. Something bright caught his eye. From the dead man's open hand, a golden ring slipped free. It struck the cobblestones with a small, clear chime and began to roll. The ring spun in a widening circle, its polished surface flashing in the lantern light like an invitation, before wobbling toward the shallow gutter and sinking into the muddy water. Footsteps thundered from within the house. The boy's breath caught in his throat. His gaze flicked to the gutter. The boy moved before he could reconsider. He darted low across the street. The smell of blood hit him, metallic and sharp, but he did not falter. He dropped to one knee, his hands sank into the gutter. The ring felt hard against his palm. Water and mud oozed between his fingers as he darted toward the deeper shadows down the alley. The heavy oak doors burst open and 3 soldiers rushed out, cloaks snapping behind them. Boots thudded against the cobblestones as they surrounded the fallen man. One knelt immediately, grabbed the man's hair and pulled the head back, looking closely. A broken silver clasp fell away from his throat. Another seized his wrists, examining his hands. A third began patting down his deep blue, slightly frayed and mended doublet, searching pockets, inner lining, even the boots. One soldier stood and barked, "Nothing here." Another answered, "Check again." The boy in the shadows watched as they flipped the body. Unhurriedly the officer emerged from the doorway, adjusting his gloves and surveying the scene. The soldiers straightened at once. "Did you find it?" he asked, his voice calm and decisive. "No, sir." The officer descended the steps slowly, eyes sweeping the ground, the body, the soldier's hands. "Search the room again." "Yes, sir." 2 men hurried back inside at once, boots pounding up the stairs. The officer remained where he was, studying the corpse with an expression that held neither grief nor anger. His gaze drifted toward the shadows, pausing just long enough to make the boy's stomach twist, and then moved on. The boy did not wait to see more. He slipped into a side alley, then another, weaving through passages. Only when the noise of the street faded did he slow, ducking behind a toppled barrel near the crumbling wall of the old tannery. There, in the damp and dark, he opened his hand. The ring gleamed even without lantern light. A stag was engraved within a circle. He swallowed and slid it onto his thumb. It did not fit properly. The sound of approaching steps echoed down the street. A man holding a lantern, the town's guard, peered down the street. The boy held his breath. The man moved on. The boy remained still as the footsteps faded away. He yanked the ring off and shoved it into his pocket. He looked down the street, slipped from hiding and disappeared deeper into Blackmore's tangled streets. Behind him, soldiers tore apart an upstairs chamber in a desperate search. Dawn came to Blackmore thin and grey. Fog still clung to the alleys, reluctant to release its hold on the crooked roofs and sagging eaves. The boy had not slept much. He had dozed in fits beneath a broken cart near the old tannery, waking at every distant shout, every passing wagon, every echo that might have been boots. The ring lay against his thigh, tucked into the lining of his pants where he had sewn a small hidden pocket months ago. He could feel its weight even when he tried to ignore it. It seemed heavier in daylight. He waited until the market filled before moving. Morning bustle meant he would be harder to notice. He slipped into the current of townsfolk flowing toward the square fishwoods, balancing baskets, apprentices carrying bundles of cloth, temple acolytes hurrying with their hood up against the chill. No one noticed the ragged boy among them. The boy looked for his friend first. He found Pete where he usually was, behind the tannery yard, perched on a broken crate and gnawing on a strip of something that might once have been meat. Pete's sandy hair stuck out in all directions, and his boots, if they could still be called boots, were split clean at the toes. "Pete," the boy hissed, glancing over his shoulder before stepping closer. "Pete, look what I found." Pete raised his palm toward the boy. He squinted at him, annoyed at first, then curious. "I think the butcher and his wife are arguing again," he said with a smirk. "What is it?" The boy opened his hand just enough for the morning light to catch the gold. Pete's expression changed instantly. He slid off the crate and leaned in. "Where did you get that?" The boy swallowed, then spoke quickly, the words tumbling over each other. He told him about the window, the falling man, the soldiers, the gutter, and the way the ring had spun like it wanted to be found. Pete listened without interrupting, his eyes flicking back and forth between the boy's face and the ring. When the boy finished, Pete let out a low whistle. "You're the luckiest rat in Blackmore. What do you want to do with it?" "Sell it, I think. It's worth money. Maybe we can buy some sweetcakes." "Like your mother told you, sweetcakes are only baked for the Spring Bloom Festival." At the mention to his mother, the boy's face scrunched up and tears welled up in his eyes. "She is gone forever," the boy said quietly. They found old Keta sitting on a crate in a narrow side street off the main thoroughfare where he was most days now. Broken crates and barrels littered the ground. Some of the windows in the surrounding buildings were broken or gone. Once, Keta had owned a proper shop with shelves full of goods and real coin passing hands. But that had been before the war and the fires. Now he dealt in whatever came his way, scraps, trinkets, stolen goods, and rumors. Orville lounged nearby, picking dirt from beneath his nails with a bent pin. "Hey, Keta," Pete called as they approached. "We've got something to sell." Keta didn't look up right away. "You always do. Never worth the trouble." "This one is." "What?" Keta asked, lifting his head. Pete glanced at the boy, then slowly pulled the ring from his pocket. Gold caught the dim light. Keta's eyes widened before he could stop himself. "Nice one, isn't it?" Pete said, a grin creeping across his face. Orville leaned forward, squinting. "Keta, didn't that fancy knight say something about a gold ring?" Keta's head snapped toward him. "Shut up, Orville." Pete went still for an instant as his grin vanished. His hand tightened around the ring. Keta recovered quickly, forcing a casual shrug as he reached out. "Let me see it." Pete pulled his hand back just out of reach. "What was that about a fancy night?" he asked. "Nothing," Keta said quickly. "Just talk. You know how it is." He stepped closer. "Now, how much do you want for it?" Pete didn't move. "Maybe," he said slowly, "we should find this fancy knight ourselves." For a brief moment, a dangerous grimace passed across Keta's face. Then he lunged. Pete was ready. He jumped back, and Keta's fingers closed on empty air. "On!" Pete shouted. The boys bolted down the alley, boots slapping against stone, laughter and curses echoing behind them as Keta and Orville gave chase for all of 3 steps before giving up. The boy clutched the ring in his pocket. "Pete, I think that fancy knight is trouble." Pete spat to the side, trying to catch his breath. "Everything's trouble." He straightened, brushing dirt from his shirt. "Don't worry. We'll sell the ring back to him. I'll negotiate the price." The boy stared at him. "You will?" "He doesn't scare me," Pete said, though his voice carried just a little tremor. "You hold on to the ring. I'll call you when it's done." It didn't take long to find a lead. "A fancy knight?" said a woman selling eggs in the market square. "Breastplate all polished up, thinks he's better than everyone." She sniffed. He's staying at the pickle house. Pete flashed her a crooked grin and a bow. Much obliged. As they approached the inn, the boy slipped behind a stack of crates across the way, crouching low. From there he could see the door clearly. Pete didn't hesitate. He brushed his hair back with one hand, squared his shoulders, and walked straight into the pickle house like he belonged there. The boy was nervous. Seconds stretched into minutes. The door burst open. The man in the ornate breastplate stepped out, dragging Pete behind him by the hair. Pete clawed at the man's wrist, wincing. I told you. I don't have any ring. I was just asking. The officer said nothing. His grip tightened. Pete twisted suddenly, slipping free with a sharp jerk that left a few strands of hair in the man's hand. Run! Pete shouted at the top of his lungs. Steel flashed. A single, clean motion. Pete cried out and collapsed, clutching his leg as blood spread dark across the fabric. The boy froze. Every instinct screamed at him to move, to help, to run, to do something, but his body refused. The officer grabbed Pete again, pulling him upright with a single motion. Pete kicked and struggled, his voice cracking into panicked screams. Trash like you needs to be taught manners, the man said calmly, dragging him up a set of stairs. The door slammed shut behind them. Tom waited near the pickle house as the light faded, keeping to the darkest corners, watching every movement at the door. He touched the ring in his pocket, for luck, he told himself. The upstairs door opened. The boy almost ran toward the house. 2 soldiers left the upstairs room and came back carrying food. No sign of Pete. Tears welled up in the boy's eyes. By the evening, hunger drove him away. He made his way to the edge of town, to the Rolling Barrel, an alehouse where the merchants gathered in the evenings. Sometimes, if luck held, someone might toss him a crust or a coin. Inside, the air was thick with smoke, sour ale, laughter and voices. He lingered near the back, listening. He is coming back, one man muttered. Quiet, another replied. A third voice low, steady. What did you find out, Hal? There's one wagon leaving in the morning, Hal said. North Road. The boy stilled. His hand drifted to the hidden pocket in his lining. The ring felt cool and heavy. A horse snorted in a stable next to the tavern. A single wagon stood ready for travel. The boy stepped toward the wagon.